Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to one of our live stream sessions. My name is Munya. I'm from the Education People. We're here together with our partners from No Turning Back to inspire you and give you insight into all things marketing, PR, and etc. We've got our partners right there, ready to inspire you. So I will introduce my colleague here, Andy, who's one of our volunteer enterprise advisors as well. We're in Kent. So welcome, over to you, Andy. Enjoy.
Munya, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Lovely sunny day down here in Kent. Thank you all so much for joining. Yes, as Munya said, I'm a careers and enterprise advisor. I'm also an advisor to No Turning Back, and it's a wonderful enterprise, and it's going to be a great privilege for me to introduce you in a short while to our wonderful ambassadors, 4 individuals who I hope are going to inspire you. And my job today, Akin, as we move our way through the presentation, my job today is to marshal us through this 3-point agenda. Firstly, I'm going to talk very briefly about the No Turning Back enterprise. There'll be an introduction to marketing from our 4 ambassadors, and each of whom are going to share their own experiences, 4 diverse, wonderful experiences. And really, guys, thank you, Akin, on the next slide. My job today, before you start reading as well as trying to listen to what I'm saying, my job today, guys, is to do 2 things. I'm going to introduce the 4 ambassadors, as I've mentioned. I'm also going to invite you to do something. I'm going to invite you to listen in today and hopefully take some inspiration from what you're going to hear, and take that inspiration with you into the summer holidays. Because the great thing about No Turning Back and what the Careers and Enterprise Company do, it starts to inspire you around different pathways, different career thoughts, raises your own bars of ambition. And the whole thing about No Turning Back and the Careers and Enterprise Company is to start helping you reframe your own forward path, your own sort of ambitions that hopefully will be enlightened today by listening to 4 of our ambassadors at No Turning Back. And isn't that an amazing statistic that you can see, 2 amazing statistics that you can see in front of you on the screen? 20% of the total young talent that enters our industry, and I'm a marketing consultant as well, and I take very little pleasure in saying to you that only 20% of the talent comes from multi-ethnic backgrounds. I've been in the marketing industry for over 30 years, and it strikes me that there is a real lack of diversity in the industry at large, and No Turning Back is all about getting a more diverse group of people into the industry, because more diverse people bring better ideas, and in the world of marketing, great ideas deliver great campaigns. So it's with huge energy that we have this ambition to overcome this other statistic of 20% of leadership roles should be at the moment represented by diverse talent. For me, that's way too low. 1 in 5 of our leaders from ethnic backgrounds, way too low. So the ambition in No Turning Back is to start driving those statistics north, to get a much more diverse group of people to come into the industry. And to overcome this quote, we want to challenge the belief that the marketing and communications industry is not just seen as a serious career option for Black, Asian, multi-ethnic graduates and school leavers. Everyone's invited into the world of marketing, and what you're about to hear is hopefully some inspiration from 4 individuals. But before that, I think we have a poll, Chloe, and I know that Chloe's going to help me with this. If you can't see the poll, guys, please press your escape buttons, because we'd like to kick off with a nice interactive question to begin with. Let's read it up there on screen. How much do you know about marketing and communications? We're going to give you a few seconds to answer. As I said, if you can't see the poll, press the escape button. But give us a quick idea. We'd love to know the audience that we're talking to. How much do you know about marketing and communications? Please select 1. Tick 1, and I'm hoping that the poll results will come through in real time. We are relying a lot on IT, as the world has been for the past year and something. and IT often lets us down, but I'm hoping on this occasion it won't, because for myself and for the 4 no turning back ambassadors, it will be really good to see how you answer these questions. How much do you know about marketing and communications? I think that's the poll closed, and we've got just over half of you are saying not so much. Great answer, because you're about to learn something, I hope. If all of you said, yeah, I know everything about marketing, then maybe you wouldn't have learned quite as much over the next 40 odd minutes. But over half of you, 57%, are answering that question, not so much. Nearly a third of you are saying quite a lot, which is great. So I'm going to invite some questions. Pose your questions in the chat room. We want to hear from you. For those of you saying quite a lot, well, tell us, what do you know about marketing? Put some questions to our 4 ambassadors. For the 14% of you who say, no, I don't know anything about marketing, well, ask the questions, because there is no such thing as a silly question here. Everyone is wide open to questions. And I think with that, it's a good idea to bring in our first ambassador, because Kerryn is going to introduce herself to kick us off with, and I think Akin, the first slide is to introduce all 4. The first person that you will hear from is Kerryn, then Emily, then Akin, then Medha. 4 wonderful ambassadors for No Turning Back. So without further ado, Kerryn, please introduce yourself and welcome.
Hi guys, so my name is Kerryn Sorrendo and I currently work in digital PR at a digital marketing agency called Minty Digital.
Hi guys, my name's Emily Chow. I'm a marketing executive at a sport content agency called Livewire Sports.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Yeah, my name is Akinola, and I'm a partnerships manager at West Ham United Football Club.
Hi everyone, I'm Medha. I'm an account executive at CC Group PR, which is a B2B tech PR company.
Great stuff. And just to start, before we kind of delve a bit deeper, like Andy said, into our own kind of specific journeys, I think it was quite important for us to just briefly touch base on, well, marketing is quite a broad term, but actually it encompasses a lot of different areas. And this is the purpose of this, is to kind of highlight that it's not just one thing. There are loads of various options you can go down, loads of different touch points where there are career opportunities for you to look into. Obviously, you've got social media marketing specifically, which, you know, any of us who've got mobile phones or who are active on social media, things that you see on there, in essence, that is element of any type of communication that you're looking at. More time, there's an element of marketing. There's been a strategy that's been put out there, and whatever that content's landed in front of your phone or your social channels, there's an element of marketing to that. Public relations, that's press, that's PR, that's actively, you know, putting out a positive message about either a brand, an organization, a situation. That, you know, PR is a consistent and a strong form of marketing as well. Digital marketing, so adverts on websites, that kind of thing. That's also, again, a career path that people can go down. Events, so events marketing. So, you know, for example, you know, the Euros, that is, in essence, is an event. It's being marketed at the minute as well. So, you know, that's an example of an event that's being marketed. Then there's sales itself, so actively selling marketing campaigns and selling products and services. Sales require marketing for it to work effectively. So, you know, again, just showcasing that there's loads of different elements to marketing as a whole. And then there's a deep layer, which is that strategy and that insight element, which is around understanding why people do the things they do, why they interact with brands the certain ways they do. There's, you know, that's that much more in-depth, data-driven kind of strategic angle to it. Sports marketing, which is kind of the path that I'm in specifically, which is, again, maximizing on the fact that the love that people have for sports. There's that, you know, there's a full career that can be done delivering that specifically as well. And then content specific marketing as well. So that's, again, aligned with the social media side of things, where it's about putting content out across channels for people to engage with. And actively getting that in front of audiences. So, as I said, that's just kind of giving a brief overview, or kind of touch base on in a bit more detail as we move across through the different slides. But I hope that's just kind of giving you a touch point to the different types of marketing that are out there, in case any of you weren't aware before. I'll just move over to Kerryn, who just wants to kind of link up between things that you're probably doing in school at the minute and how those can actually support any kind of career paths down there.
Great stuff. Yeah, so as Akin said, marketing as an industry is really, really broad, but all those areas to you guys that are currently in school studying, they're probably a little bit alien in terms that you've never really heard of before. But actually, all these different areas in marketing link back to the subjects that you guys are passionate about, the things that you enjoy. So for example, English is a lot about writing and storytelling. I work in public relations myself, and that's a real core of my role, whether that's writing press releases, blog content that will go on websites or will be going into the news. English is a really strong part of that. Art and design is pretty self-explanatory, you know, whether that goes into content marketing or even graphic design or photography. These are all elements that work within marketing as well. One that's probably, well, two that are not so obvious are maths and geography. Numbers and marketing actually link very, very well. For instance, Akin touched on then strategy and insights, which is very data driven. So if you are a person that really loves maths and loves working with numbers and is really good at interpreting data, there's a place for you in marketing as well. Geography, are you interested in different cultures, different countries around the world? Well, travel marketing, that fits with that. An interesting one is IT, and one of the really emerging areas within marketing at the moment is search. So looking at how people use Google and what they search for and turning that into marketing campaigns and using that data for brands to use. And then, of course, as a couple of people that are talking today will tell you, P and sports marketing is a really big industry within marketing itself. So I think it's fair to say whatever your passion, whatever your subject you like, there is a place for you within marketing. Just pass on to you, Emily. There you go.
Thanks, Kerryn. So just nodding to what Kerryn mentioned about finding an industry that you really enjoy and using your interests to stem from that. So marketing can literally span across all industries, whether that be music, fashion, traveling, gaming, and for me, I work within the sports marketing space like Akin. All of you can choose to do marketing within any of these spaces, and that can be driven by where your interest lies. And it's not just limited to these couple of industries. You could have the food industry, all sorts. So that's really driven by your interests and your passion. So Akin, if you don't mind switching to the next slide, just touching to a couple of brands now. So brands exist within the marketing umbrella, I would say, and they can be, you probably have heard of Little Moons, for example. They're marketing their brand. Their strategy took off on TikTok, which I assume a lot of you are probably using at this age. But the approaches that some of these brands have taken are all really unique. So what's quite exciting about marketing is it's all completely different. Everyone has their own really creative approach. Pretty Little Thing, for example, is a clothing brand that uses influencers to market and reach their audiences. So there's a lot of exciting activity within the marketing space, and depending on which industry you choose to go into, there's so much opportunity as well.
Cool. So now each individual ambassador, we're all going to dive into our own backgrounds, our individual experiences, and our current roles in PR and marketing. So I will hand over to Kerryn.
Great. So, yeah, as I mentioned, my name is Kerryn. I'm a digital PR account executive at Minty Digital. I'm 25 years old. I'm of British and Caribbean heritage, and I currently live and work in Barcelona. 3 interesting facts about me is that I hosted an event with the Queen of Cakes, Mary Berry herself. I relocated to a European country, Barcelona, during a pandemic and post-Brexit, which has been stressful but worth it to say the least. And when I was 7 years old, I visited 10 Downing Street alongside my local MP, campaigning for better education around the world. Yeah, just on to the next slide. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour of my education and career today. So I went a very normal comprehensive high school in Leeds, where I'm from originally. I then went on to Notre Dame Sixth Form College to do my A-levels, where I did A-levels in psychology, French, English literature and classics. I then started my university career at Northumbria University in Newcastle. An interesting thing to say is that I went into university a little bit quickly. I didn't really figure out what it was I wanted to do. I went to university because it was a done thing and that's what everybody else was doing around me. So I actually started doing a degree in American studies. I had a little bit of interest in American politics, a little bit of American history, but like I said, I just wanted to go to university. So after very few lectures sat through the American Civil War, which was quite painful, I made the brave decision that it wasn't necessarily for me. So I had a little bit of a life crisis, and it was my mum that was looking through the course book and helped me decide to change courses. And she found communications and public relations, and I hadn't any idea of the industry before this. And the thing that persuaded me to do this particular course was that the description matched my personality, or so she said. So it was a people person, somebody who's interested in the likes and dislikes of other people, people that like storytelling. And from that moment on, I realized that the industry was really people orientated, and that's what sold it for me. So I graduated in 2018, and I will go into more detail of my career, but I went to the Environment Agency, which is a government organisation. I then went on to work in a communications agency, particularly doing PR at Finn in Leeds, and then on to a digital marketing agency, Minty Digital, which is where I am now. And then just great stuff. So taking it right back. So my favourite subject at school was English literature. I loved writing, I loved reading. I probably wouldn't have admitted it at 15, but I was a little bit of a geek for words. I also really liked history, which I decided to keep in because I then went on to start a degree which was predominantly history based and hated it. And I think it's just fair to say that your interests are going to change. What you like, what you're good at is going to fluctuate lots, and that's okay. It's not just a straight path. It's okay to make those quick change decisions because it really can alter your whole course. Why did I choose PR? So as I kind of mentioned, I really like the storytelling element of it, and it's all about people. It's all about understanding what people like, what people don't like, and putting that out to, in my case, the media. I liked the variety of it. So as we kind of touched on, there's lots of different subject areas, there's lots of different brands to work in, there's so many different areas of marketing that it feels like there's still lots to explore. And yeah, there's lots of opportunity to write. I really enjoy writing, I always have, and I think I've played to my strengths in the fact that I work in PR and a lot of my role is writing press releases and writing lots of different content. So how did I get here? So after I graduated in 2018, I did an internship called the Summer Diversity Internship Programme, which is run by the civil service, and it is meant to get people from lots of different backgrounds, particularly minority backgrounds, give them a little taste of what life in civil service is. So I worked in the Environment Agency in the summer of 2018, which was the last World Cup. And for any of you that remember, it was the hottest summer that England had ever had. So fresh out of uni, I walked into a national press office with the fact that the UK could potentially run out of water. So from day one, I was dealing with media inquiries from some of the top journalists at top newspapers, and I was drafting and writing quotes that were later printed in those newspapers. I then went on to have a full-time role in the Environment Agency and moved up to the regional team in Leeds and worked on some really exciting campaigns. But I began to realise that I was at the beginning of my career and I didn't have too much experience and I still wasn't sure which area of marketing I wanted to go down. So I decided to go work for an agency. So I moved to an agency in Leeds called Finn Communications, and I got the chance to work on lots of different brands. So for example, Yorkshire Tea, Plain Tea hand towels, and of course Mary Berry's range of cakes as well. My role at Finn was very traditional PR, so a lot of the things that I was doing was working with print newspapers and print magazines. But as you're all aware, the world is so much more digitally focused at the minute. So I decided to make the move, which is my current role. to a digital marketing agency. So I now work in digital PR, and our main aim is to build a brand's presence online. So that's where I am now. So I thought it would be really great to give you guys a little bit of insight of what my role used to look like. So when I was working at Finn, as I mentioned, we hosted an event to launch Mary Berry's first ever range of cakes. And I think this is just a really good example of how many different activities and tasks and skills there is within public relations. So the whole point of the event was to encourage people, first of all, to buy the shops, but to buy the cakes, but also for the shops to stock them. So we ran an event with journalists, influencers, and also retailers. So people from Asda and Sainsbury's and Tesco, and got people to talk about it on social media, people to write about it in the news, and just to create a really cool buzz around the range. So that's a bit of an example of where I am today, how I got there. So I'll pass on to Emily, who will tell you a little bit about herself.
Real, thanks, Kerryn. Hi everyone. So as I mentioned before, my name's Emily. I'm 24 and of Chinese background, so my family are all from Hong Kong. But we moved to London, and I used to live in Reading, but have recently moved to London for my job. I'm a marketing executive at a content agency that sits within the sports industry called Livewire Sport, and I'll sort of differentiate what that might mean to work for an agency and work for a client, because before I entered my role, I had no idea what the two meant really. And there are just a couple of interesting facts about me. So when I was at school, I actually wanted to be a doctor. So that's very different to what I'm doing at the moment, obviously. And I'll explain a bit more about how I managed to get to this position. About a year and a half ago, I climbed Kilimanjaro, the tallest mountain, or tallest freestanding mountain in the world, I think, in Tanzania for charity. And for any hockey players out there, I managed to represent England in a Home Nations tournament when I was at university. So that was the peak of my sporting career, I'd say. Thanks, Akin. So this is just a bit of a top line on my journey since school. So I was at school, a single-sex girls' school, so slightly different to Kerryn, for 7 years. And personally, I loved it there. Had a really good environment working and around people that had similar mindsets. My GC selection was interesting, to say the least, because I was slightly orientated to study medicine. So I thought studying Latin, all the sciences. I enjoyed PE at the time, so that was my favourite subject. So I was always going to keep that. A language we were forced to have. So I studied German and also a technology. So I know how to sew, doing textiles as well. So a real broad range of subjects that I studied at school. But for sixth form, I started to narrow that down, looking for that sort of medical sort of tailoring. So I studied biology, chemistry and maths to A level, and physical education at AS, because that was always a subject that I really enjoyed. So I did the whole process of going through UCAS, applied for medical school, and unfortunately, it wasn't a success story for me. So I didn't get any offers. However, they offered me other courses, whether that be neuroscience, biomed, all brilliant courses as well. But at this point, I was really confused as to what I wanted to do. So I took a bit of time away, and I thought, what am I good at and what do I love? So I decided to decline all my choices and options and go into clearing, which, don't get me wrong, was quite scary. But I knew that if I combine the two, my passion and what I'm good at, then I'd be fine. So I ended up going to Brunel University in West London to study sport, health and exercise science. So I was there for 4 years, and it was a sandwich course. So in my third year, I was given the chance to study or work in the industry for a year, and that could be any job that you found, that as long as it was 12 months long. So I ended up working as a marketing executive for a healthcare and pharma comms agency. So an agency essentially runs a lot of campaigns and runs a lot of creative work for your big clients. So within the pharma industry, that would be your GSKs, your Pfizers, your AstraZenecas. I had no idea that I was going to be working within this industry, and by the end of it, I knew the work that I was doing was great, but it wasn't quite the industry that I wanted. So I went back to uni, finished my final year, and I came out and found myself working for a charity, still within the marketing space, but this was also a slightly different industry. So marketing to, so the main fundraising this charity did was using big events. So it was events marketing for this particular charity, working with your Sainsbury's, your Asda's, your Tesco's. And I still wasn't quite happy with the industry that I was working for, even though we got free boxes of chocolates here and there. So luckily, I actually managed to get a phone call with someone that I had previously worked with on placement, and she invited me to come work for her and join her at the agency I'm now at, Livewire Sport, working within that digital and sport content space. And because I had such a good relationship with her when I was on placement, that really helped me get my foot through the door into an industry that I actually wanted to work within. So Akin, if you don't mind switching, thanks. So this is just a couple of reasons and things that led me to where I am today. So I mentioned I love the sciences, so I took the maths, biology at school, and PE was always my favourite. So in the top right is me and the rest of the squad, amongst lots of rugby players and football players. I was representing England for my hockey at uni, so that's always sort of travelled with me throughout my entire life. And why sports marketing? It's quite a niche but small, sort of run by a small number of people, but it's absolutely huge, the audience that it reaches. And for me, it's the media industry within sport is constantly evolving. It's completely global, so you're traveling all over the world talking about different sports in different languages. There's always, you know, huge events, your Olympics, your Paralympics. There's so much going on, and that keeps it really exciting. And I think it's a rare industry that is completely passion led. So people that want to talk about sport, write about sport, it's because they enjoy it, they love it. And I think that's a really rare thing for that particular industry, which is what drew me to it. And finally, I think there's a huge amount of influence that sport can have, and the social change that it can stand for, sort of shown by some of the huge athletes that have sort of stood for certain campaigns. So those are just a couple of reasons about why I ended up choosing going down this route. And yeah, I've summarised probably how I managed to get here, but my greatest stepping stone was probably that placement experience when I was at university. Just experienced what marketing was, quite rogue from my degree, but that's sort of led me to all sorts of opportunities. That's got me to where I am today. And
Emily, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to interrupt this lovely flow because we've had a question, and I'm going to encourage others to post their questions. But thank you, Kia Price, and I hope, Kia, from what you've heard from Emily and Kerryn already has helped answer your question. But Kia asked the question, what do you think is the best way to get into a marketing career? Kerryn, let's go back to you in helping answer that, because I think you've both answered it in your own different ways, but it's worth revisiting the answer to that question, because I'm sure a lot of people are listening slightly in awe of Emily playing hockey for England, slightly in awe, Kerryn, of your background, the fact that you're sat there in Barcelona, immersed in the world of digital. I think the question is still outstanding, isn't it? So how the hell do you get into this brilliant career? Kerryn?
I think it's a mixture of two things. So experience, which I think is what everybody says whenever you ask how do you get into the industry, and also using what you have at your fingertips already to learn about it. So whether that be following the brands that you love on social media, and learning about looking at the content that they post in a different way, or whether just using the internet to research, to find out, to learn. Because I think for me personally, marketing was never an option until I got to university, but actually all the resources and everything I was reading and consuming was around me already. So it would just be, yeah, experience, as much as experience as you can get, whether that's volunteering and also just learning and using what you have at your fingertips to understand it from a different perspective.
And Emily, what I'm learning from you, or being reminded of from your story, is that it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, my dad wasn't particularly happy when I decided to change 2 weeks before results day, but you know, you've got to do what you want to do at the end of the day. And for me, I mean, with marketing, Kerryn's already highlighted how many of the school subjects sort of correlate with the skills that are used in marketing. If you use or try and make that connection between the soft skills that, you know, teamwork will provide you with, you know, where have your communication skills come into play, all of these things are encompassing within marketing. And I know sort of the experience is the hardest part to get. Don't get me wrong, sort of trying to get all of the experience we have has taken lots of failed attempts of non-returned emails and applications, rejection, everything, you name it. You know, it's a numbers game, so you just do have to persist. And you know, whether you see a marketing internship on LinkedIn or Indeed, whatever job market you're looking or job site you're looking on, read the description and try and correlate where your soft skills, even though you might not have any experience, how that can correlate.
That's great. And I interrupted the flow, but I thought it was a good half time. I think a footballer would say that was half time.
Yeah.
So Emily, does that mean that I'm going to Akin now?
Well, I could just wrap up, sort of talking about what my day-to-day involves.
My apologies. I'm interrupting you. I've cut you off at the knees. Do carry on.
So yeah, just on the side here is a couple of our sort of clients as an agency. The great thing about working for an agency is that you're not limited to representing one brand. You can work with so many different brands, which is what keeps it so busy and creative and exciting. So, you know, we work with rights holders and sports organisations. So Akin, for example, works for West Ham. He would be a potential client for my agency. But yeah, lots of the different school subjects have that sort of overlap with what I do in my day-to-day. I don't particularly study art at school, but I do a lot of video creation and content planning, whether I'm video editing them myself or giving it to a professional. I'm writing articles and things like that for websites and press releases for my agency. I do a monthly data and insights report on how we're performing, so I have to use my math skills. My general interest in sport is sort of covered across the whole industry, and just keeping up to date with the news and the global sort of geography that sport has is second to none with the audience that it can reach. And my passion for science is probably slightly smaller in all of this, but I'm a health and wellbeing sort of champion at work, so something nice to think about anyway. And that's me done.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Great stuff, Emily. Yes, so over to myself. So my name is Akinola. Background, I'm Nigerian, from London. Some few interesting facts there, pretty random. I've met Sir Alex Ferguson, the great man. It was an honour, fantastic moment. I've cycled to Amsterdam twice, and I have went to the World Cup in 2014. Wore a more suit and was the star of the show of a very, very boring England Costa Rica game. So that was a great experience. But yeah, so in terms of work, so I'm partnerships manager at West Ham United, and I'll delve a bit deeper into that. But just to take it one step back into kind of the point where probably a lot of you guys are, people that are kind of watching this is, you know, at that kind of 15, 16 kind of age, trying to decide where I want to go and what I want to do. To start, I'm the classic failed footballer, all right? So tried, didn't happen. You know, one or two more rejections. That first touch just wasn't good enough. It was a realization that, right, that path isn't going to be the option for me. So is there another way that I can still be part of the game that I love so much? Passionate about football, in essence, is a big part of who I am. And it was a case of and like I said, I'll discuss it a little bit further, is how can I link the passion and also an interest in marketing as a whole and put the two together. And it was a kind of laser focus to, so my career probably slightly different to some of the others who have spoken, is I kind of knew that this was what I wanted to do from a very young age. So the focus was, how do I get there? And I'll just kind of discuss that in a bit more detail. So yeah, in terms of education, so like I said, I'm probably the old head out of the group here. So I went to school way back in London, Southeast London. Went to a secondary school in Crofton, and went to an academy called Crossways Academy again in Southeast London as well. But again, like I said, at that point, it was a realization that the path that I want to go down is something that is aligned to sports and aligned to marketing. I want to be part of the sporting experience, where however that may be. I found that there was a degree course at the time. It was one of the first courses that did a sports marketing and promotions degree. So I left London, packed my bags, went all the way up north to Huddersfield to do that course specifically, because again, it was part of that long-term vision that if I go and do this course and I come out the other side of that, then I'll end up working in sports and it will be hunky-dory. Now, as life, and this is a lesson for all of us that are on this call, life doesn't always go down the path that you think it's going to. So yes, I went up north, did the degree part, finished it, everything else, graduated, stepped out first day after graduation thinking, well, where are the jobs? Where's Man United? Where's Arsenal? Where are they? Why aren't they trying to hire me? It doesn't work like that. You've got to apply, you've got to actually put, so then I was applying for a lot of jobs. It just wasn't happening. It's a competitive industry, working specifically for football clubs. If you think about it, there's you're in 20 Premier League teams, 72 teams in the football league. So it's not really, if you think about it as an industry, it's very small, but there's loads of people who want to enter it. So, it's that was a challenge. So it was a case of, well, I changed that career, I changed the journey a little bit, still with the same goal in mind. And that's something that I'd share to everybody that's on here. That path you may have to take different lefts and rights, but still keep that long-term goal as the vision. So I ended up working in financial services for 4 years, which was not football, but did that from a marketing perspective. And again, the company I worked for, they provided marketing support for financial advisors. So the role that I was doing was really, it was my breeding ground really, in terms of getting the skills that I needed, so that one day eventually I could say I've got the experience, because I left that role at Simply Biz as someone who had worked in marketing. So I may not have worked in football or may not have worked in sports, but I understood marketing at that point. So then it was just a case of, well, when the right opportunity presents itself, hopefully I can then move across. Thankfully that happened. I've got a role at Championship Club, Birmingham City Football Club. And again, started out a kind of lower level position, used that as a chance to kind of learn the industry, learn how to deliver marketing from a club perspective for partners, because that's a slight differentiation to what I do. You've got kind of some of the other types of marketing we talked about, which is about promoting the brand or the organization. What I do is slightly different in that my role is to promote our partners, our sponsors. You would have seen that type of thing on football shirts. You see a football shirt, there's a logo on the front of it. Some of the controversy that some of you may have seen recently, Cristiano Ronaldo moving the Coca-Cola bottle, and things like that. All of that kind of thing is the type of work that I do on a day-to-day basis, or that was the career path that I wanted to go down. So I worked at Birmingham for up to 4 years there. Kind of worked my way up as a kind of entry-level position as an assistant, before eventually, by the time I'd left, I was the club's advertising and sponsorship manager. So I kind of had full remit over the club's overall sponsorship proposition. But it got to a point where I'd kind of done everything I could there, and I really wanted to kind of then challenge myself and take that next step of my career. And then the opportunity came at West Ham United in 2019, where I joined the club as their partnership manager, with the focus of that role being overseeing and managing the partnership portfolio for the football club as a whole. So just again, briefly touch on kind of my journey and why I do what I do. Kind of my favorite subject. So I was the traditional subjects weren't for me. And again, maybe everyone's journey is different, but I'd like to hope that I can share that anyone here who you need those, of course, they're important, but if you struggle with them, because I struggled with those, I struggled with maths, I struggled with English, you know, those kind of subjects weren't specifically what I enjoyed as much. Obviously, I got the necessary grades I needed to, but I'm quite an outwards person. I like to be doing things. So I like PE, I like design, tech, like drama. So that I kind of aligned those kind of skills from a foundations perspective was things that I thought were from a career perspective. I want to be doing something where I'm heavily involved with people. So I'm able to interact with people on a regular basis. I'm able to think outside the box. I'm able to think creatively. And I'm able to use the power of sport, and that's why I went to sport sponsorship specifically, is use the power of sports to help brands engage with audiences. And yeah, so that was why I wanted to kind of go down the path that I'm involved with. As you can tell, it's sports sponsorship, it's partnership. So like I've mentioned a couple of times, it's about people. It's about me being seen as a support for others. So again, in terms of some of you people that are watching and listening today, if you're that type of person where you like helping others, you like to be a team player, you want to do your bit, then you know there are opportunities like the type of work that I do specifically that can be perfect for you. In terms of how did I get to where I am, like I briefly touched base on, I decided, look, this goal that I want to achieve is so important to me that if it means I've got to stay left a little bit, but still have that as the end goal, then I'll do that. So I went to work in financial services. So again, like I've said multiple times, advice for anyone on here, you know, you may have an idea of what it is you want to do, or a rough inkling, but if you're passionate about something, you think that is what you want to achieve, then stick with it, because generally I can say 16, 17, 18 years of age, what I'm doing now is what I dreamt about wanting to do. So, you know, I think it's something to bear in mind that my story kind of reflects that anyone out there who's listening to this, just stay focused on that, whatever that long-term kind of goal is, and you can achieve it. Briefly touching on, well, what does my role specifically, what does it involve, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? It's very varied. So yes, a lot of it is kind of planning and creating marketing campaigns, but for our partners. So my job is to make sure these partner brands, they spend a certain amount of money with the football club, and they want to see a return on that spend. So it's my job to actively work with them to deliver campaigns so that they continue to want to align with the football club. On top of that, we get to interact with the players on a regular basis because we deliver content campaigns for the partners. So the likes of Declan Rice, Mikel Antonio, I've done things with them in the past, and they're great characters, really good guys. You know, you don't want to catch them on a day after a loss, and I'm asking them to do some lines to camera. They don't want to hear it, but you know, that's part and parcel of the role. And it's but at the same time, it's giving fans experiences. So I don't know anyone who's out there who might be a West Ham fan or fans of any football club. Really, the type of work that I do, we create competitions and experiences so that fans can enjoy being associated with their club at a much higher level. So whether that be giving fans opportunities to come to the matches, meeting the players, and those type of things, and attending matches so that I build relationships with the partners that I look after. So I'm at all the home games, sometimes at away games, taking clients to those games to kind of again just strengthen those bonds and those relationships that I kind of have with those brands. So I'll stop talking now. I hope that's giving you a good overview in terms of my kind of journey, and I will pass over to Medha.
Thank you. So hi guys, I'm Medha. I turned 26 very recently. I feel a bit old saying that out loud. I'm based in London. I've lived here for around 8 years now, and my 3 interesting facts are I spent the first 10 years of my life living in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. So it was a pretty big culture shock for me when I moved to the UK, mainly due to the weather. I love playing video games, whether that's Call of Duty or Animal Crossing in my free time. And thanks to the lockdown, I actually learned how to cook some proper decent dinners last year. So I'm very proud of that, hence why it's on the list. Next slide, please. Okay, so talking about my education and career so far. So as I mentioned, I lived in the Middle East for 10 years, and then me and my family moved to London. So I was around 10. I attended a all-girls school. For me, it wasn't the most fun, just because there wasn't any boys around to distract you. However, we did have a boys' school across the road from us, so that was fortunate at the very least. So after I finished my A-levels, where I studied English, business and history, I then decided to study at King's College London for university. I chose King's because I wanted a big change. I wanted to be more independent in my life, move out of home. Just whenever you bump into the street into someone, they could be from anywhere, any background. So I decided to study international relations, partly inspired from my international background. So that subject includes a lot of different disciplines within it, whether that's history, economics, law. It's quite a broad subject study. So overall, I had a really great time at university. Once I finished university, I actually was kind of clueless what I wanted to do, maybe because I had too much of a good time. I guess when I started, I wanted to be a diplomat, but then to do that, you have to start the process quite early. My parents were both in the medical field as well. My brother worked at Google. He was way more academic compared to me. So partly inspired by my family, I knew I wanted to work at least in something tech or science related without actually having to be a doctor or an engineer. So out of uni, I was looking at some various jobs. I saw some sales roles, and that's when I started at AKJ Associates. So that's a company that hosts cybersecurity events. The main things I liked in that role was the creative writing aspects. And then from that, I knew people who worked in PR as well. So speaking to them, hearing their experiences, how much they enjoyed it, it made sense that maybe I could try it. And as I was doing B2B tech sales, maybe I could try B2B tech PR, hence how I ended up at CC Group PR. So if I had to explain what B2B tech is very briefly, so that's a business to business technology where business sell to each other. For example, if Google was trying to sell its software to Tesla for its self-driving cars, rather than Google trying to sell its platform to me and you to use. On to the next slide, please. So my journey so far, my favorite subjects at school, English literature. I loved it, even though I never really read the books properly and usually just went on to Spark Notes most of the time. Chemistry, for some reason, that was the only science subject I liked and was good at. Drama, because, well, we all love a bit of attention. And lunchtime, because socializing is important and we all love food as well. So why I chose PR? I chose it for a few reasons. One, because I do like to think both logically and creatively, which I feel is very much welcome in the industry. Another one is delivering clear, confident information to your clients. It's kind of still blows my mind that I can be a 26-year-old and I'm giving advice to multi-billion-dollar companies. They actually listen to me and take that on board. Another one is watching the companies that you represent grow, whether they're small startups or huge, massive companies that we've all heard of, such as BT, seeing their presence grow in the media. And then also, I guess, relating back to my love of lunchtime, working together in a team is very social. PR in general is a very social industry. You have relationships with your team, journalists, your clients. So yeah, how I got here, like I said, I think it was quite a happy accident. When I left university, I was very confused. I didn't have a linear or concrete idea what I wanted to do. As I mentioned, my brother was the guy who excelled at science and maths, and my whole family were quite focused on that route. So that in turn made me want to try, okay, if I'm going to do PR, I'll try dip my toes in tech at least, but in a less focused book by the book way and more creatively led. So yeah, that's how I ended up in PR. And next slide. So my role on a day-to-day basis. So just yesterday, we went out with one of the biggest funding announcements of the year for a financial technology company that we work with. And for me personally, I just find it amazing that how we've helped through PR to help it grow from established to a multi-billion-dollar company. Another one is pulling together industry-wide reports. So an example is, for example, we had a report which had 15 technology companies such as Revolut, and they all contributed to this paper, and then you present that to the media and use PR to get coverage for that. Another one is very important in my role is to make sure that we generate coverage for our clients. So in all types of media, whether that's the BBC, the Guardian, the Telegraph, again, you have to, that needs a lot of relationship skills as well. Make sure that you take them out for lunches, schmooze them a bit, all of that, which is always fun as well. And then finally, a lot of content, press releases, whether you're announcing a new product, a new funding announcement, companies combining together into one. That's also a huge part of my role. So overall, my day-to-day, every day is really different. And I guess that's probably why I like PR, just because if it's not different, I can't keep my attention or focus. So yeah, that's me, guys.
Thank you. Are you still taking this, Akin? I think
Yes,
you are.
absolutely. Yeah, no,
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect.
Next
We've got
section.
10 minutes left, guys.
No problem. So next section, we're just going to briefly touch base on, obviously Andy gave an overview in terms of what no turning back is, but there were some good resources that we think could be of value to you guys kind of watching, and hopefully you can kind of pick up on there moving forward. So the No Turning Back website, we can make sure we get this link across to everybody. It's a great platform to just it's got a lot of great advice in terms of building a LinkedIn profile, interview tips, CV tips, a bit more detailed insights into some of the different careers that we've kind of talked about. So I think it's really worthwhile if you get a chance to visit that website. We also have, there's a job zone there as well. It's where we try and put out kind of entry-level positions or internships. So some of the guys have spoken about those kind of internships and first steps on the kind of ladder type of opportunities are a great way to get you started. So it's definitely something that's worth obviously visiting. And like I said, we can make sure that link is shared with everybody that's on the session today, and definitely have a look over it. Yeah, and then just finally, like I just briefly touched on as well, so that there's a specific job zone on the site as well. So you go onto the website, and there's as you can see on the screenshot, you click on the job zone, and there's a multitude of roles which are specifically designed to help get people onto the ladder.
So as we've probably mentioned before, trying to get up to date and well informed of all the different brands and industries that you may potentially want to work in, the best way to do it is just to soak up as much knowledge and as you can. And I imagine a lot of you are on social platforms, but just following the brands that you like, the athletes or the people, the influencers and followers that you think are of interest and who are influential people in the world. You might, I think the limit for or the age limit to sign up to LinkedIn might be 16, but I would definitely use that as a platform if you're starting to think about that business orientated knowledge, to get on LinkedIn and start following the business people and leaders in the world to start understanding the industry that you're about to enter.
And then kind of this section here, we just wanted to kind of burst some myths that you may or may not have heard about what a career in marketing kind of looks like. I think I'll start with one in that there's an assumption that you have to be creative to be in marketing, and there's an element of that, but I would actually argue there are so many different types of roles that it's so broad of an industry that your specific skill set, there are opportunities, whether that be like who was talking about, if you like numbers and you like data, there's a whole role and sector in that specifically that specifically sporting organizations but brands need to be better at anyway, because you need to have a better understanding of your audience so you can better market to them. So that's just one example. If you like to plan and organize things, there are opportunities in terms of specifically delivering events. So that's one myth that's definitely worth bursting, in that it's just not all about creativity.
Shall I go next? So you don't need a degree in marketing at all. Well, you don't need a marketing degree to be specific, but you don't need a degree at all. So a lot of people get into marketing through apprenticeships or straight out of school. That is an opportunity, and especially you don't necessarily have to have a degree in marketing to then get a role or PR. I think I am an anomaly to the fact that I did have a degree in PR, but I would say that every other person that I work from has degrees in lots of different areas, and I think that's what makes the industry so exciting.
Yeah, and
sorry.
Go on, Medha, go on.
Cool. Next one is marketing is only writing content. I think as you've listened to all of us, there's so much more than that. There's so much different kinds of work you can do, whether that's strategy, planning, pitching new business, social media, depending on your own interests and what you personally enjoy. There's definitely something within the marketing sphere that you can find that you'd like.
And lastly, there's a misconception that marketing is just to sell a product. I mean, in particularly with sports, you're not really selling anything. You're trying to engage with your fans and, you know, highlight, oh, look, this is a cool hat trick from so-and-so, or people are just interested and want to see really interesting sort of bits of content. So we're not particularly selling anything to them. So that's just another myth associated with marketing.
Thank you, Emily. I'm going to pause before we come back to a poll question in the few minutes that we have remaining. We've had a couple of questions that are pushing against the same topic. Lauren Parr, thank you for your question. What degree would you recommend for someone who wants to end up in PR? Then we've had another question that follows a similar theme that I think Kerryn was answering. The question reads, as showing you've studied to a higher degree is usually more appealing to employers. Do you think that having a degree is a main deciding factor when it comes to employing an individual in marketing? Or do you think having a successful career in marketing is just as accessible through internships, online courses, and general working experience? Lauren, I think you kind of answered that question when you were talking, but it's worth reiterating some of the main points that you were making in answer to both of those questions, actually.
Yeah, do you want me to pick that up? Yeah.
Please do, Kerryn, yes.
Yeah, so I would say that I don't think you need a degree at all to work within marketing or PR. And I think it depends what role you are going for, because there is so many different roles, whether that be an entry level or that be more senior. And I think it's so accessible through your internships, through your online learning, that a degree will not essentially be desirable for an employer. And especially looking at those entry level roles and coming in from the beginning, especially for example school leavers, apprenticeships are a really prominent way that people get into the industry. So I think, to answer your question, no, a degree it's not necessarily essential.
And can I add something in my experience of hiring people in the industry to support what the four guys have been saying? In summary, the expertise in marketing and PR is really to be an expert in audience. If you're an expert in audience, and if you're motivated by the things that drive people to think and buy what they think and buy, then this is a brilliant, wonderful career for you. In order for you to be an expert, you need to understand how lots of different people think, which is why our four ambassadors and myself are passionate about diversity. Because you can't possibly be an expert in audience if the people that you work with and the people that you interact with are all like you. So diversity is very important in the industry of marketing, if only for that reason. And Louise Rochford has asked the question, and I think I know the answer to this question. She says, can you see yourself continuing in marketing? If so, the same area? Now, she's put that to everyone. I think the answer on all of our behalves is yes, we do see ourselves continuing to work in marketing, but in the same area. So do any one of our ambassadors want to take that question? Does any one of you think that, yes, you're going to stay in marketing, but you're going to change the area of marketing and PR that you're going to work in? Who would like to take that?
I mean, I can take it from in terms of the various options that are available, specifically from a sports perspective. I think, yeah, I think that's something that could be a possibility, because it would actually enhances me as a person. So working in football is fantastic, but actually there's kind of skills that I can maybe pick up working on the rights holder side like Emily does, or maybe working in a totally different sport, or leaving sports altogether and picking up skills that are non-sports from working in, in a non-sporting environment will actually only just make me a more rounded individual. So yeah, I think that's something that I could definitely see. I'm not sure what the rest of the guys feel.
I can
to add to that point. Oh, sorry, I keep talking over each other. To add to that point, I said I'm quite interested in gaming in my free time and everything, so it's definitely something that I wouldn't mind to venture into in the future. PR for PlayStation or Nintendo, whether that's even a different discipline of marketing, doing their social media or their SEO person. I mean, I'm quite currently enjoying tech right now, but maybe in the future, if I want to move on, it's definitely you have the basic skills in any role to move on to a different industry if you really would like to.
Yeah, and I guess to follow that, I've always had quite an interest in sort of sports apparel. So your branded sports clothing, applied to quite a lot of those brands, but wasn't quite successful. So I thought going to an agency, get the experience first, see how much I can learn, and then we'll see where we go from that. And even then, within my job in marketing, I've been exposed to a lot of sort of broadcast. So even dipping my foot into becoming a bit more practical and sort of adapting my role myself and speaking to my manager and saying I want to maybe go on a couple of shoots and see what it's like to get behind the camera and like film and direct a little bit. Marketing is so broad, you can sort of tailor what area you can sort of explore a little bit.
Perfect. We've got one final question that I'd like to close with everyone. So again, if you can't see the question or interact with the question, press escape. But this is an interesting one for us to close on, because so often is the case, isn't it, that you tend to follow footsteps of your family, mum and dad, or any friends and loved ones around you. If they do something that you think is really cool and you'd love to follow in their footsteps, that's the pattern, that's the career path that is often self-subscribed. So this question really tries to give us as a panel and as a facilitator a bit of intelligence as to whether anyone else in your family already has a career in marketing, sports marketing, or communications. A simple yes or no. Let's open that question up, Chloe, if we can, and just see if we've got an audience that has family that already works in this industry. Yes or no? Well, that's already higher. No, it's swinging now. 80-20. Any more takers? 80% of you do not have family that work in the industry. 1 in 5 of you do. Are we about to close? We have closed the poll. So it's interesting to me actually that there's 1 in 5 of you who have friends and family that work in the industry, which is really interesting. And I'm really hoping, as are the ambassadors, that when we come back and do this, and we'd love to come back and do this again with everyone, that statistic changes, that it's not 80-20, it's 70-30 or something like that. And I go back to our first poll actually, that when we started this session, there were 57% of you who knew nothing about marketing. I hope the answer to that question is now very different. Whilst we're out of time, I invite, because it's a bit clunky to go through the chat room, I invite anyone to come off mute and pose a question to any one of our ambassadors, or indeed myself. But we're all wide open for questions. I know that we're approaching the end of your school day, but we're okay to hang around for a couple of minutes. If anybody wanted to come off of mute and ask a question of any one of our panel today, is there anyone out there, or even a teacher that's sitting in and listening? Any questions out there?
There's a hand up.
Is there a hand up? Help me with the tech, and let's bring in the question if we can. Any questions? No questions?
There's a hand up from Lauren Park, but it's just unmuted.
So Lauren has written it in the chat. So she said, how do you handle an ethical dilemma in PR/marketing?
Ooh. Who wants to volunteer in answering that question? I think Kerryn's edging her hand up. Go on, Kerryn.
I'll go for this because I think, and I am assuming here, that there's a very interesting reputation around PR, and people that work in PR get the nicknames of spinners or like truth spinners, and not necessarily telling the story as it is. And there is lots of ethical dilemmas going around. But I think I experienced this when I started in my career, that that's not essentially true. And I think it is just as credible and reputable as any other kind of industries out there. So I think, and whenever I have, and I haven't faced many ethical dilemmas, it's always approached very honestly, would be my answer, which I think runs through pretty much all the work that I know that I do. Honesty is still at play.
I could probably add to that in the sense that, so within sport, obviously there's a lot of athletes who like to take a stand for what they think is right. And you have to think really carefully as to how you're going to word and communicate that, because everything is scrutinised over the media. So we work with our clients. So even just, for example, the Premier League, we run their digital and content channels, and we have to get the wording bang on with how we want to communicate with that with our audience, because it is so important how that message sort of relays to them. So our account managers will work with the comms teams at these organisations to make sure that we represent their brand, as well as sort of comment on what we think needs to be spoken about.
Yeah, I think again, I'd add to that as well, specifically from a football club perspective, and I'm sure you know those you would have seen in terms of players taking the knee and everything that's been around that as well. That, you know, there's a lot of discussions have happened internally in terms of, and a lot of those discussions have been had with those who have been affected by those type of issues. So they have been at the core of those conversations. And I think specifically speaking for West Ham, the club have taken an approach of listening to the players, and understand that yes, that is important to them specifically. But on top of that, I would actually add that's the kind of stuff that's being done outwardly, but the things that probably don't get talked about as much as a lot of the work that's happening internally. I'm pretty sure it's the same with a lot of our organisations, in that an awareness that a lot more needs to be done in terms of supporting increasing ethnic diversity across the football club and across a lot of our different sectors. And I think specifically from a West Ham perspective, that's been a lot of the work is being done on that angle, which is now we're starting to see some of that kind of see those benefits moving forward as a club. But there's two sides. There's the outward stuff that obviously dealing with dilemmas and issues, but really I think the real work that needs to be done is the internal stuff, because that's when we can hopefully start to make a real change.
Good point, Akin. And Medha, as somebody that's lived in Saudi and Bahrain, what do you make of the rise of the women in sport agenda? Because in Saudi, of course, only until recently, women were not even allowed in gyms, were they? So to Lauren's great question around the ethics in the industry, what do you make of what's going on in different parts of the world ethically?
That's a very good question. I mean, different parts of the world have their own ideas and ideology. I don't want to say what's right or wrong for certain places. When I lived in Saudi Arabia back then, women weren't even allowed to drive, and now they can. But I think for issues like that, it's just you have to approach it very sensitively and make sure you're not offending anyone. That you really understand the audience that you're trying to communicate to, what is the message that you want to get across, and just, try and have a very transparent dialogue and see if you can come to an agreement and go from there, I guess.
Perfect. Right. We are edging towards the end of a school day. It's not the end of a working day, so we're all going to go back to work. You guys are going to sort of travel home safely, at least with the sunshine on our backs. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. I hope you've learned something importantly over the past hour. Please stay in touch. Get in touch with us at No Turning Back. You've got the details. Munya and Chloe and the team at the Careers and Enterprise Company, we're always happy to have feedback on these sessions. They're there to inspire, they're there to help you learn, and we've been absolutely privileged to be in the company of 4 brilliant ambassadors. So Emily, Akin, Kerryn, Medha, thank you very much for busting into your working day and just helping inspire our next generation of leaders. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. Thank you for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.